Chapter 3, Part 1. Knowing your motorcycle. Sidebar in this chapter, getting to know your motorcycle, left handlebar controls, right handlebar controls, instrument panel, mirrors, ignition switch, fuel supply valve, foot controls, stand, riding posture, motorcycle pre-trip check, pre-trip planning check, periodic inspection, and riding and the environment. Chapter 2, You and the Motorcycle, presented different options for choosing a suitable motorcycle and safe riding gear. This chapter focuses on how motorcycles work. Read on to find out the basics about motorcycle operation and maintenance. Getting to know your motorcycle. Thinking like a rider. You're going out with a friend for your first practice session. He asks you to show him a few controls. You point out the throttle and the brake. He asks you to show him a few more things. You look at him with a frown and say, "Come on, when can we start?" He says, "Okay, try pushing the motorcycle around the driveway." You get it down off the stand and try to push. It won't move. It's still in gear. You look at him and say, "How come?" He replies, "Well, maybe we'd better finish getting to know how everything operates." Sidebar, gray sidebar at the bottom. You need to be able to operate all of your bike's controls without taking your eyes off the road. Every bike is a little different, so check your owner's manual for specific information about your bike. In the diagram, instrument panel, ignition switch, left handlebar controls, right handlebar controls, fuel supply valve, and foot controls. Left handlebar controls. Choke or enrichener, clutch lever, high-low beam switch, horn, and turn signal switch. Clutch lever. This lever operates the clutch, which is the mechanism that engages the engine to the transmission. Some motorcycles with automatic transmissions do not have a clutch lever, and on most motorcycle scooters, this lever operates the rear brake. Squeezing the clutch lever will disengage the clutch and disconnect the engine from the transmission. Releasing the lever will engage the clutch and connect the engine to the transmission. You will use the clutch lever when selecting and changing gears, when putting the motorcycle into neutral, and during some slow speed maneuvers. Turn signal switch. Use turn signals to let others know the direction you intend to ride. The turn signal switch operates the left and right turn signals. Use your thumb to operate the button. Some motorcycle models have the left turn signal on the left handlebar and the right turn signal on the right handlebar. Most motorcycle indicators do not cancel automatically. Make sure you know how to cancel the signal. High-low beam switch. Most motorcycles come equipped with a headlight that turns on automatically when the engine is running. The high-low beam switch will change the headlight to the high beam or low beam position. You operate it with your left thumb. Horn. You operate the horn button with your thumb. Your horn is an important way to warn other users of potential danger. Choke or enrichener. Most motorcycles have either a choke or an enrichener to help start a cold engine. Move it to the on position when you start the engine, and gradually move it to the off position as the engine warms up. You will find either the choke or enrichener on the left handlebar, near the ignition or below the gas tank. Check your owner's manual for more information about your motorcycle. Right handlebar controls. Diagram. Engine cutoff switch, front brake lever, throttle, electric starter. Engine cutoff switch. This switch stops the engine immediately. You use it to turn off the engine in emergencies, and you turn it on before the starting the engine. Use your thumb to operate the switch. Electric starter. Most newer motorcycles have an electric starter instead of a kickstarter. After you turn on the ignition switch, use the electric starter to start the engine. Operate it with your thumb. Make sure the transmission is in neutral before you use the starter. Front brake lever. Motorcycles have two brakes. The brake lever on the right handlebar operates the brake on the front wheel. You operate it by squeezing the lever towards the hand grip with the fingers of your right hand. The rear brake is usually operated using a foot pedal. On most motor scooters, the rear brake is operated by a lever on the left handlebar in place of the clutch lever found on most motorcycles. Some motorcycles have linked braking systems. With linked braking, applying the front or rear brake lever applies both front and rear brakes. Check your owner's manual to determine how to operate your motorcycle brakes. Throttle. The right handlebar grip is also a throttle or accelerator. To increase the engine speed, rotate it towards you, roll on, and to decrease the engine speed, rotate it away from you, roll off. The throttle should always spring back to the idle position when you remove your hand. Instrument panel. Number 1, speedometer. 2, odometer. 3, trip meter. 4, alternator warning light. 5, neutral light. 6, tachometer. 7, turn signal indicator. 8, high beam indicator. 9, oil pressure warning light. As you sit in the rider's position, you will see the instrument panel directly in front of you. The panel is a series of gauges and indicator lights that monitor the condition of your motorcycle. Match the numbers in the illustration to the numbers in the chart to find out the function of each item. Some motorcycles may not have all the controls in the illustration, and some may have other controls, such as a fuel gauge or a temperature light. Table. Number 1, speedometer. Function. Shows speed the vehicle is traveling in either kilometers or miles per hour. Number 2, odometer. Displays the number of kilometers or miles that the motorcycle has traveled since manufacture. Number 3, trip meter. Shows the distance traveled since it was reset to 0. Number 4, alternator warning light. Shows whether the battery is charging. Number 5, neutral light. Usually a green light that tells you the transmission is in neutral. 6, tachometer. Shows the engine speed in revolutions per minute. 7, turn signal indicator. Flashes when either turn signal is active. Signals may not cancel automatically. The lights will remind you to turn off your signal. 8, high beam indicator. Usually a blue light that tells you the high beam headlight is on. And 9, oil pressure warning light. A red light warns of low oil pressure in the engine. If the warning comes on, take action to solve the problem as soon as possible. Note, the light does not tell you how much oil is in the engine. Use the oil dipstick or sight window to check the engine oil level. Some motorcycles with 2-stroke engines may have a warning light that will warn you when the engine oil level is low. Mirrors. Sidebar. Warning. Most motorcycles have convex mirrors. While they provide a wider field of view, they make things look smaller and farther away than they actually are. Adjust the mirrors so that you can see the lane behind you and as much of the other lanes on the road as possible. Each mirror should show the edge of your arm. But even with good adjustments, your elbows may block the view behind. Ignition switch. Get to know all the possible Positions of the ignition switch. Park. The rear tail light remains on and the engine is off. Key can be removed. Not all ignition switches include this position. On. All electrical systems are on and the engine will run. ACC provides power for auxiliary equipment when the motor is off. Off. The engine will not run. All electrical systems are off and the key can be removed. Lock. The steering is locked. This helps prevent theft. Fuel supply valve. Sidebar. If a motorcycle has a fuel supply valve, it will have either a prime position or an off position, shown in the diagram. This valve controls the flow of gasoline to the carburetor and is usually located just below the fuel tank. If your motorcycle is fuel injected, it will not have this valve. On some motorcycles, you must turn off the fuel supply valve or fuel petcock on to the on position for fuel to flow from the gas tank to the carburetor, and turning it off after shutting off the motorcycle to ensure that the engine does not flood when not running. Sidebar, smart riding tip. If you forget to turn the fuel supply valve to on, the motorcycle might start, but will soon stall from lack of fuel. Fuel supply valve usually has 3 positions. On, opens the flow of fuel. Reserve, opens the flow of fuel from the reserve part of the fuel tank. When you run out of fuel on reserve, the tank is empty. Off, turns the flow of fuel off. Motorcycles with a vacuum valve will not have an off position, but have a prime position on the fuel valve supply valve. Use it when starting the engine if you've completely run out of gas or if you've drained and refilled the gas tank. Check your owner's manual for instructions on how to use the valve. And we're going to stop there for the end of Chapter 3, Part 1. Thank you for listening.